So today I'm gonna get in here and kind of change the setup of this ewe pen that I have. It's something I've been thinking about and just kind of helping streamline the feeding operation and help everything. And so today I want to get in there and get that done. So historically, I've always fed small square bales. I have hay racks set up down in fence line feeders, large Premier 1 style hay feeder in the middle, another locally built one there on the end. That has always worked out really well for us, but then last year's drought and the amount of square bales that we were able to get and buy in, it just made more sense for us to buy those larger square bales. I fed those there through the late winter, early spring. I really liked the ease of that, but I started looking at feeders for them, and I really wasn't wanting to spend that kind of money on a feeder because they were all kind of collapsible, and I wasn't really sure that I liked that design. I went and looked at some round bale feeders for the sheep, and you know, those looked okay, but again, I'm not really sure if I'm going to enjoy feeding this way. So what I ended up doing was getting online, finding a used Sydell bale panel. Went and picked it up. It was about an hour and 15 minutes from here. I got it all cleaned up and disinfected, and I want to get that set up to them in this pen because I still have some leftover round bales from last year. Kind of experiment with that and see how I like it. But before I set that up here, I need to go ahead and tear down these jugs in the old creep area that I had set up. But I'm going to go ahead and try to cheat a little bit. My fan up on the wall is kind of dirty. Instead of trying to take that fan down and cleaning it, I'm going to try to use this area to set up one of our warming barrels, put the shop vac on top of there, and I'm going to try to vacuum out that fan while it's up on top still without having to tear it all down and disassemble it. I'm going to see if I can save myself about an hour of time. So that actually worked out really well for me. I was able to get about 99% of the way done. I'll either get out here with the actual sheep blower or just hook up the air compressor and blow off the blade in there. But I got it all cleaned off, so that way it's ready to use. The temperature's really starting to rise, and I just wanted to get that done so that way I could use it. Next, I'm gonna go ahead and start tearing down this area and getting it all set up out of the pen where I need it to be stored at. Then we're gonna go ahead and start setting up that hay feeding area. So I only purchased this panel right here. That's all the guy had. Was, I believe the Sydell calls that a quarter bale panel. It has an angle on each end, and it's had some heavy duty pins that it came with. These pins don't match up with the mounting brackets I have on my lambing jug gates. And so what I did is I went and picked up these electric conduit hangers, and I got those on there, and they're strapped down. The pins fit in those. I got them on each corner. What I ended up doing is, this is my 5-foot panel. It has the pass-through holes on this top where they can feed out of. I have a pin there to the gate, and I'm gonna wire it here to the joint of these two 12-foot panels. So it's wired, pinned here at the front of this quarter bale gate, and then this 4-foot gate is pinned right here to this panel. And I'm going to go ahead and right here against this panel, wherever it needs to go, I'm going to screw in one of those metal brackets, so that way this end can be pinned. And so when I bring a bale in, I'll bring it in from here on the outside of the barn, and I'll bring it in, and what I want to do is unpin that from this main part, and I'll fold this out into the pin. That way I don't drop a bale on any of these. I can drop it there. I am going to put a pallet down in here just to keep the bale up off the ground, off this bed pack. Also should be easier that way when the bale gets down really low and I need to put another bale in, I'll just pull that up off the pallet. If it's still good edible hay, I'll throw it over here in the fence line feeder in the center part. But the sheep can access, you know, through the top of this rack and these two racks by passing their head through. And on that one, you can see they can get their head in, get all the way down to the bottom. On this 4-foot gate's a little bit lower than this 5-foot gate, so I believe they'll be able to access this. There's a total of 10 pass-through holes on the sides, and then this front, and then with 24-hour access to this bale, I believe that should be enough. I may go ahead and supplement some hay out here in these feeders tonight, just because it's brand new to them, keep them away. The big thing is I made sure that these screws were facing in and the brackets were facing in. That way nobody can get up underneath of it and lift it up there, and they're pretty tight. You know, they are snug with those conduit. But my biggest fear with feeding these bales is getting one of them in here and getting them pinned. And that's the thing I've seen a couple of people talk about with goats, is those collapsible bale feeders. They've had them get their heads stuck in there. We actually, when I was using a cattle feeder that had a hay rack on the top, ended up getting some lambs getting their head stuck right in the corner where a calf couldn't get his head through the little corner where the diagonal bars were to pass their heads through, but the sheep were able to. And it's one of those things where I don't want to have to cut that metal in here in the middle of this pen in the middle of the barn, because there's a lot of straw in here, just flammable stuff. And so I ended up having to bend that, breaking the weld to get the calf or the lamb out. So this is made for sheep and goats, but I'm not too worried about them getting their heads caught in here. I just want to make sure that they can't get in here between the bale and the panels, and then have the other ewes basically collapse it in on top of them. So I'm going to kind of watch them throughout the day, but right now I'm going to go ahead and fold this out, get my pallet in here, and get a bale over here for them and drop it in. Move back. So far, this seems to be working out pretty good, this bale feeder here. One thing I noticed already, I'm gonna need to get a piece of plywood or something, or maybe a piece of paneling or something to put back here along the back, just because I wanna keep all that loose hay in the feeding area. You can see these girls are all gathered around it. They're taking up the full spots, climbing around, getting in there and eating. But then there's still some sheep back here in the back, taking a break, just chewing their cud, relaxing. Those girls have already basically been up here and gotten some of their own fill. These guys were basically on a weaning diet. We knocked that out. Everybody shrunk up good with their udders. Everybody looked good. Right now, there's still currently 2 ewes in this group that I got to send down to the stockyards. But with today being Father's Day, I didn't want to peel them out. This Friday coming up, we have the shearer coming. So basically we'll run them through and they won't get sheared, and then we'll probably load them up next weekend, I'd say, and I'll run them down to the yards then. And I think I have another one of the ram lambs that really aren't growing that great right now. I might end up shipping him also, just so I'm not wasting feed on him. But currently what I've been doing is busting apart round bales for about the last week and a half to 2 weeks and feeding just loosely. And that's why we came up with this idea for this panel. I really like Sydell's products, so I knew that it was something that, you know, I trusted and was made for sheep. And, you know, that was the biggest thing, is I'm more worried about somebody getting hung up in here. But these are 5x4 bales, so, you know, having to kind of modify which gates I had to get it all to fit worked out pretty good so far. We'll see as they eat on it. But based off our numbers, once I call those 2 ewes, one of these bales should be enough for these ewes for 6 to 7 days, just depending on waste. And it'll probably end up more being like probably 5 to 6 days once it's down and they start, you know, eating in there and dragging out some of the hay. I'm gonna have to keep an eye on it to make sure that they're not just pulling a lot out and wasting it here in their pen. But this was one of those things where it's gonna really help save time, because right now I'm making about 4 to 5 trips in and out of the pen every evening, pulling apart those round bales to feed these guys in the hay racks that I have now. And this will cut down on waste and cut down on time doing that. I'll be able to just knock this out, and it won't take as much during the week to keep these guys fed, and that'll really help us as we're getting our lambs ready for the state fair. We won't have to spend as much time feeding every evening. And that's one thing. I'm not gonna change up all the other racks. I'm still gonna use them. Those are what this pen's built out of and set up so we can cut off certain areas, like especially like when we're shearing. Really, it comes down to quality of hay. I know this is good quality hay, and currently I'm gonna be purchasing in some round bales from 2025, not only for the cattle, but also for these sheep, for these ewes, because I'm able to purchase these round bales at the cost that I need them to be. Basically what we do with these ewes to help us figure out our yearly budget and cost per lamb going forward is on weaning day. That's when we fiscally start a new year for the ewes, because everything that's going into the ewes and the rams from that point on is for 2026's lamb crop. And so that's what we'll figure all of our cost off of. And so we'll break it down, and there's a price per pound for hay that I need to be at in that range. So it's a double-edged sword. I need quality of hay. I can't just feed them trash, but I also need to be able to get into that price per pound range, so that way I know where I'll be at with my lambs next winter and spring. And so that's where this round bale little setup will really help, because right now I'm able to purchase some round bales for just a little bit cheaper than square bales, and so that's really helping out. And that'll help out once these guys, like I said, get their fill, everybody gets topped off, then hopefully this sporadically they'll be over here at the feeder eating as needed. We'll just want to keep an eye on them, make sure they're doing okay. But that's also why I got that fan cleaned off today, is because with the temperatures coming up and them guys having full access to this bale, I may want to turn that on just to help keep them cool, because they'll be digesting a lot, sitting around a lot, and that's just something I want to keep an eye on. But right now, what I'm gonna do is just go ahead and leave them alone. I'm gonna run over and feed down at the bank barn and everything else. But we'll be back to check on them this evening, kind of see how everybody's doing then, and just kind of see how they're handling it within the first 4 or 5 hours. So we're sitting at right about 5 hours since I put this in here. A lot of the ewes have been getting up here, eating on it, cycling in and out. You can see a lot of them are starting to take a break back here in the back. I got that fan going. Plenty of them are getting their chance up here at this. These guys just saw me feed everybody else grain and give them some hay, and so these group right here in the outlier has been walking around looking at the hay racks just because that's what they're used to. But so far I think this is going to work out pretty good. I'm not too worried in the sense of when I'm getting choked or anything. I did leave one of my cameras hooked up from the lambing jugs just so I can check on it tonight if I get worrying about it, but I don't really see any pinch points that I'm too worried about them getting into. But so far everything seems to be going okay. So that'll wrap this one up. Thanks for watching.